video, here are 5 tips to up your photo game. But before that, I have to go get gas. We are here at the gas station. That's how it's done. Now that that's out the way, let's get into tip number 1, ISO. ISO is one of the big foundations of what your photos will look like, or even your videos. You really want to stay into the range of at least 800, maximum 1600. Reason being, if you go past 1600, your ISO will start putting noise in your photos and videos. So take this for example. See how crisp this photo is? Now, if you raise your ISO, you're gonna get this. We don't want that shit. Bro, it's about time for another retwist. Cow. So yeah, you really wanna stay in between 800 and 1600. 800, that's the lowest you can go. 1600 is the highest you can go. Sometimes you will have to go past 1600, but I wouldn't make that a habit. I would go maybe like 2000. Yeah, 2000. Another one is outside. Outside, if you're shooting outside, you want to shoot like around this time. You see how it's perfect lighting? See, now if I was shooting at noon, right, the sun is at its peak. So I would get all those harsh shadows, be overexposed, and that's something that you don't want to deal with when you go to edit. It also makes your photos unattractive to the subject, and I run a business, so I can't, you know what I mean? I have to make these photos look attractive to the subject. You don't want to have your subject overexposed. It also creates, harsh shadows and stuff like that. So it's very important to shoot at the right time when you're shooting outside. If you can, if you have to shoot like around noon and shit like that, you want to shoot where there's shade. You know what I mean? Or you want to have like a reflector on the, you want to have a reflector at the bottom of your subject, so that way it equals out the lighting of the sun. The sun is very powerful. If you can, avoid shooting out when it's noon. Tip number 3, if shooting in a studio, you want to make sure your subject isn't back too far against the wall or the background or the backdrop in this case, because it creates harsh shadow. I can show you an example right here for a shoot that I did with a client. He's very pushed back to the backdrop. It creates that harsh shadow. It's very hard to get out of when you go to edit on Photoshop. So I recommend you not putting your subject so close to your backdrop. Make sure they're like dead in the middle or something like that, where it also diffuses the shadow in a sense. Because right here I have a constant light, and when I shot that, I didn't have this on there. This is also important. This is called a diffuser, a softbox, but it's a diffuser right here. So you also don't want to have harsh lighting in your studio, because it'll create like a shadow that's very harsh. So make sure that you scoot your subject up more into the center and have a diffuser on your light if you're using a constant or any type of lighting, because in a studio you will need some artificial light. Number 4, make sure your shutter speed is at least at 1/125 or 1/160, because that is generally where I'm always at for my shutter speed. Anything that's slower than that, you'll create motion blur. It's called long exposure. Back when I first started, I never knew that was one of my biggest issues, was shutter speed. I always had my shutter speed low, because if it's like lower than 0.6 or something like that, that's like 6 seconds. That's very slow. You really want to have it over 1/125 at least. But I didn't know that was causing motion blur in my for my photos. And all shutter speed really is how fast your camera opens and closes its lens or whenever it's shooting. If it's closing super slow, then it's gonna create like a long exposure effect. If it's closing faster, it's gonna create like a more still kind of image freeze. You know what I mean? Your photos are gonna be more crisp. Don't make the mistake of moving your shutter speed to create light. That's one of the mistakes that I was doing when I was first starting. The only things I use for lighting is my f-stop, which is my aperture, and that's what I generally use for my lighting and stuff like that. Other lighting techniques I just use like maybe like one of these if it's in the studio, or if it's outside. If it's outside, then shoot around like sunset. You know what I mean? Or have like a reflector to help you out. The last and final tip number 5, Lightroom. You really want to know how to edit your photos and how to do color theory and clarity and texture, do some noise and stuff like that. All that is in Lightroom and Photoshop. You can look up YouTube videos on how to do certain things, and you can get your photos to look, you know, way better than when they were first shot. You know what I mean? The original shot that you shoot, always shoot it in RAW. That way you have more to edit. Generally, what I like to do is mess with the texture, the clarity, the highlights, the exposure, the color, pulling out the colors in the photo, making them brighter, lowering them, etc. Reducing the noise, sharpening the images, all that shit that you'll learn when you go edit. So there are your 5 tips. Hey guys, that is the end of the video. People have been asking me to do a tutorial in Lightroom or in Photoshop. I will do that in the next video. Peace.